Redskins name. Their petition already has 128,000 signatures. For stories like these and more updates all day long from your favorite news outlets, go to offthepress.com.
America's Voice Live, America's fastest growing news program. With Steve Gruber.
We've got to put America first. You do that by voting and bringing your friends to do the same.
Delivering the latest news, observations, and opinions. With the entire Real America's Voice team, America's Voice Live starts now.
Welcome to America's Voice Live. I'm Steve Gruber. Today is Tuesday, August the 29th. Let's get to the day's top stories. Despite the constant refrain that our economy is doing just fine, the American people, they're not buying that swill. Brandon Arnold from the National Taxpayers Union will join me with the true impact of Bidenomics on Americans and American families. Also, Donald Trump vowing to appeal the trial date set for special counsel Jack Smith in the case against him. He said that the trial date set for the day before Super Tuesday gives the corrupt government and deranged Jack Smith and his team of thugs exactly what they wanted. And then later, some are saying that Joe Biden is causing a national security risk by pressuring developing nations to drop their laws against homosexuality. And some believe it's a threat to our national security. Dr. Jeff Myers will have the details on that and so much more coming up. But we start here. I am the problem. Me. I'm the guy. I'm the problem. Ask any lily-white liberal elitist. It's been me the whole time, if you didn't know. According to liberal and progressive doctrine, it's me. I'm to blame for the problems of America, and frankly, all the problems the world has ever known can be laid directly at my feet, so say the enlightened ones on high. It's not because I make too much money or not enough. It's not because I take government handouts. Not because I'm addicted to drugs or have any violent tendencies. No, it's not because I smoke either or anything else. It has to do with just one thing. One thing only. I'm white. And therefore, according to Joe Biden and all the other far-left socialists running around in Washington, it is me and anyone that looks like me that's to blame for everything that's ever gone wrong. And unless my kind are kept in check, it'll be the end of freedom, democracy, and, of course, America. None of that's true, of course, but that is the next big talking point, and we have heard this before lots of times. That doesn't make it any more true than it was back then. It's also a clear indication that the left keeps seeing polling numbers for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and realize they're in very serious political peril. In fact, one might say it looks like the ship is sinking, right alongside the feeble president's failing poll numbers. And of course, it isn't lost on anyone how ironic it is that the left wants to play racial politics and blaming white Americans for the ills of society while running an old white guy for president again. But here's why they're doing it. How about this poll from Fox News? A 30% drop in support among blacks for President Biden, with about half of it shifting toward Donald Trump. This is why the left is desperate. So, how frantic are the Democrats today? Well, the shooting in Jacksonville has become just about the only thing they're talking about for days. They're shrill and screaming about white supremacy, how it is the biggest threat to the nation, that it's far more pervasive and prevalent and dangerous than anyone actually realizes. Of course, that's all false as well. It's been over 160 years now since Democrats got together to create the Ku Klux Klan. Almost 100 years since the Klan reached its heyday in 1920 with about 6 million members during the administration of President Woodrow Wilson, a Democrat himself and one of the most openly racist presidents of all time. In fact, he ranks right up there with the openly racist Lyndon Baines Johnson, but it was Wilson that screened the openly racist film Birth of a Nation in the White House itself. And make no mistake, Democrats don't care much about factual historical accounts of what their party really is and, well, always has been. They don't want to talk about Wilson or Democrat Governor George Wallace, another outspoken racist who ran for president on the idea of segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever. All to keep blacks and whites in America separate, and more importantly, for the Democrats to keep the black population in its place. Of course, the Democrats now claim falsely, of course, that at some point in the 1960s or somewhere, parties switched. Republicans became Democrats, Democrats became Republicans. It's fanciful and it's a fantasy. But does that mean that Ronald Reagan was a Democrat actually as president? Richard Nixon too? Was JFK actually a Republican? Well, no, of course. You see, all the good guys are Democrats and the, quote, bad guys are Republicans. So how about Jimmy Carter, who was elected in 1976? There's a whole lot of blue down south, isn't there? In fact, the South is the only reason Jimmy Carter won that presidency. That's weird. This was after Nixon's Southern strategy, where Democrats claimed he whispered racist dog whistles to Southerners to get their vote. Was Jimmy Carter just more openly racist than Republican Gerald Ford in that election? Is that what it took? The whole idea that the party switched is, of course, ludicrous, because it has always been Republicans that have led the charge to fight for equal rights for blacks and, frankly, all Americans in this nation. Everyone should know that by now. I mean, the party was created to end slavery. Which part did you miss in class on that one, lefties? Republicans were created to end slavery. How about a refresher? Democrats wanted to keep black people enslaved so badly, they caused a civil war that cost 660,000 Americans their lives and left 1.5 million more wounded. The North fought to end the practice and save the country. Later, President Dwight D. Eisenhower was the man that sent the National Guard to Little Rock in 1957 to enforce the federal law of allowing black students into previously all-white schools. And Eisenhower was the president who signed the first major civil rights bill into law. Did you know that? It happened in 1957 as well. And he did so with the backing of Republican senators in large part, not Democrats. But history doesn't matter, and neither do facts in 2023 in Democrat politics. But let me tell you, my friends, facts matter to me. How about some more facts that are a bit more recent? How about the fact that Martin Luther King Jr. was a Republican by all accounts, and LBJ used language to describe black voters that I cannot repeat here, nor would I want to. He used it as his impetus for signing the Civil Rights Act of 1965. It was not to help out blacks, but to help Democrats get and keep power by getting black votes, period. And, of course, Joe Biden is the man that attended the funeral of the former exalted cyclops of the Klan, Senator Robert Byrd of West Virginia, and praised him. He was thanked by the likes of Hillary and Bill Clinton that praised, and surprisingly, Barack Obama. But he didn't just attend the funeral, he eulogized the man. And the media has gotten ahead of this story. Here's how the headlines read when they fact-check this claim. Biden did not eulogize former KKK Grand Wizard. That's the headline, but of course, if you dig a little bit into the story, which most people won't, it reads this way. Biden did eulogize Senator Robert Byrd when he died, but Byrd was not a Grand Wizard in the Klan. He was a member of the KKK in the early 1940s, but later renounced his affiliation with a hate group. You see how they did that? They lied to you. But to be fair, because the mainstream media certainly isn't, Republicans have had their share of racists too, but to hear the Democrats tell the story today, they're just as pure as the driven snow, while the Republican counterparts are simply evil and a threat to the very nation. That whole theme was dragged out into the open again on Monday, and Joe Biden, who counted many segregationists among his close friends in Washington, worked to gaslight the world again. However, I can read, and I know who he is. I know that 2 million members of the Klan resided in Indiana in 1920. They're almost all Democrats. Again, facts that are easy to verify, and another reason I keep World Book encyclopedias from years gone by, because those facts cannot be erased by the newspeak overlords of today. But Joe, he just blurts out what he's told to say. You know that, like this.
To the point where the intelligence community is determined, the U.S. intelligence community is determined that domestic terrorism rooted in white supremacy is the greatest terrorist threat we face in the homeland. The greatest threat.
Just sad. And sadly, it's not just politicians that are wrapped up in these lies. There are many members of the media that apparently have never read World Book Encyclopedia. or any actual books about American history. In fact, they cannot even get recent history right. They just regurgitate the same old trite and false allegations about conservatives and Republicans. Take a listen to this bizarre question.
Does the White House see any connection with the changes that the Florida governor has made in teaching about African American history to the kind of violence that we saw in Jacksonville?
You know, it is truly sad when so much ignorance gets so much exposure in the media. No wonder millions of people in this country are just so ill-informed. Like Ronald Reagan famously said, the problem with my liberal friends is that they know so much that just isn't true. I mean, let's be honest like we always are here. The Democrats have no policies that actually benefit black Americans or any Americans in general. The spending is out of control, creating a nightmare scenario in the economy. And then mocking people for not believing that Bidenomics is actually good for everyone is a big fat loser, too. The border, the billions to Ukraine, while Hawaii is pushed to the back burner to be forgotten again. It really is appalling, and that is why there is a shift in this nation, away from the losing policies and back to a common sense approach, and why people are willing to vote for people they don't like to get the policies they do. It's time to put America first. And we do that by rejecting the empty identity politics and the politics of race baiting. And like Morgan Freeman famously said, to stop racism, stop talking about it. Put America first, would you please? I know you do because you're here. Coming up after the break, the Democrats continue to praise the economy. But really, what is there to praise? We're going to discuss Bidenomics with Brandon Arnold up next on ABL. Well, the White House had President Joe Biden mumble his way through another promo of Bidenomics and another attempt to brainwash Americans thinking you're just that stupid. They want to avoid the effect this administration is having on everybody's wallets. Just listen to this.
Look, folks, Bidenomics is about the future. It's about each of us writing the next great chapter in American history.
It's about investing in America, investing in Americans. Bidenomics is just another way of saying restoring the American dream. Because when we invest in our people, from the middle out and the bottom up, not the top down, we see economic growth and benefits for all Americans. Folks, Bidenomics is working, and we're just getting started.
Well, it doesn't work because it doesn't stop the fact that the majority of Americans hate it. And they disapprove of the president's handling of the economy. Yet, Vice President Kamala Harris and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen held a joint press conference, a call that is yesterday, to tout the work of labor unions, hoping to keep the union workers' vote for 24. Good luck with that. Joining me live now to discuss all of this, the Executive Vice President at the National Taxpayers Union, Brandon Arnold. Brandon, good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Look, Bidenomics, it really is the worst public relations and campaign maybe ever. Probably worse than giving a guy a beer in a bathtub and calling it good for a beer company that went bottom up. Bidenomics, every time the economy does anything, they're held responsible. I don't know whose idea this was. Terrible idea, because the truth of the matter is the economy is not really working for most Americans right now, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, Bidenomics is more of a threat than a promise of prosperity, as they're trying to make it seem. You look at what's actually happening to Americans right now. Bankruptcies are up 16% relative to last year. Nation's credit card debt, our total national credit card debt, is over $1 trillion. We are borrowing money in order to stay afloat in this economy. That's not a good thing, especially as the Fed continues to raise interest rates. It's raised interest rates by about 5 percentage points over the last year and a half, making that credit card debt even more dangerous, pushing up those bankruptcies and pushing up the default rate on things like automobile loans. So no matter how many times they say Bidenomics is working, people aren't buying it because they see themselves gathering this debt, gaining this debt, seeing prices increase at the big box stores, at the grocery stores, at the gasoline station, everywhere they go to buy things. So the American people are smarter than this. Fortunately, they're not buying Bidenomics, and they're not going to be changing their tune anytime soon, no matter how many times the president says it's working.
Yeah, and the president's polling numbers, according to Gallup, when it comes to the economy, are stagnant in the mid 30% range. I'm not sure who it's working for, but for 2/3 of Americans, Bidenomics is not working. That's a poll that's out. 63% disapprove of Joe Biden's handling of the economy, tied with his disapproval on relations with China, and slightly behind is 66% disapproval on immigration. Where is Joe Biden winning? Because, look, you bring all these folks in across the border where we've welded open the gates. They're competing for jobs, at least some of them are. We've got a job market now that's actually tightening. The is actually evaporating because the Fed's raising rates because of all the reckless spending, all back to Bidenomics. It comes, Brandon, and there, I don't see a tea leaf I can turn over and say, well, this looks good. Not energy prices, not the border, not job opportunities, not actual wage growth, nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I think what they're looking at is the inflation rate is coming down. That's the one positive thing that we can say about this economy right now. And that is good news, but we got a long way to go. It's only very recently that inflation has begun to get below wage growth. So we've seen inflation so high that prices have increased faster than wages have. That means people are getting poorer, even if their salaries are increasing, or even if they're getting a little bit more on a per hour basis. They're falling behind because inflation is so out of control. And then you look at the federal government's finances, $1 trillion deficit as far as the eye can see, moving up to $2 trillion in deficits in the not too distant future. He's completely mismanaged our nation's financial situation. The only groups that I can see really enthusiastically endorsing Joe Biden are government unions, because he's made the government larger. He's given a high degree of job security. They already had pretty good job security for anyone who works for the federal government. Besides that, I don't know where support for this guy's coming from.
Well, I want to talk about one thing. You know, the price of gasoline, for example, is exactly where it was a year ago, just shy of $4. This is something that every family deals with, whether they have to go to school or the soccer game or to work every day. Everybody feels the pinch of the energy. that is being charged at the pump. And this is all during this fantasy that somehow we're going to convert to EVs in the next 15 minutes, and everybody's going to magically drive an EV to work and sing Kumbaya. You know, the average EV is what, $60,000, $70,000. Most people can't afford a $400 emergency. A $400 emergency would set most families into the ditch financially. And yet they just keep singing the praise of Bidenomics. At what point do you say, look, that's not working? Or are they in this and they've already embraced it and it's over?
Well, the problem is when we say things aren't working, what the Biden administration does is go ahead and try to subsidize these things. And that's exactly what happened with electric vehicles. Some people think EVs are great. More power to them. If you want to drive that kind of vehicle, go for it. This is America. You can make those kinds of choices. But what happened when they didn't see enough production of EVs, we started to subsidize them. Even cars that were extraordinarily expensive that are being purchased by people making six figures, people making hundreds of thousands of dollars, getting thousands of dollars of subsidies in order to purchase these types of vehicles. They may be a more commonplace 10, 20 years from now. I don't know. But right now, that average family that needs to get to soccer practice, let alone to get to work, the grocery store, what have you, they need more affordable gasoline. They are not, as you said, going to go out and buy a Tesla. It just ain't happening. So what we've seen from this administration is reducing the amount of energy, not increasing the amount of energy that is available. And thus, that's why we've seen prices go so high and been so volatile.
Well, and the other thing, yes, inflation's down to 3% currently, but it's cumulative. Prices are 17% higher than they were just 2 years ago, whether it's eggs or milk or gasoline. Mortgage rates are 3.5 times higher. The 30-year mortgage rate on average is 3.5 times higher than it was just a couple of years ago. I mean, Brandon, those are things that choke out the American family. It chokes out the American dream insofar that people that want a chance to have their own home and have a part of the American dream, they're boxed out because of Bidenomics. Who does it work for?
Yeah, I mean, that's been the real problem. The Fed has been the only government agency that has tackled inflation in a meaningful way. Biden and the Democrats in Congress passed the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which Biden has since admitted did nothing for inflation. If anything, in the short term, it drove up inflation. Meanwhile, the only way the Fed can reduce inflation is by hurting the economy, by making Americans poor. If you have less money in your wallet, that means you have less money to go out to the store. When you go out to the store less often, that reduces demand. So that's basic economics there. It does work, but it comes at a very, very high cost. Like you said, it's very, very difficult to buy a house now. If you can even find any inventory out there, when you go to actually fill out that paperwork to get a mortgage, you're going to find you're paying far more than you expected. So what we should have seen...
There's a second half to that story that we'll be covering here in the days to come. But BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street are these companies that are buying up middle-class homes. People come in and think they can buy a home, then a cash offer comes in. So the interest rates are high, then cash offers come in from these companies that know that at some point, at least they strongly believe and anticipate that the government, using my tax dollars, are going to be paying rent for middle-class families in America. There's no other explanation for BlackRock and Vanguard and all these companies be gobbling up all of these homes. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we need here is more of a supply side approach to righting this economy. That means bringing more housing online so you don't have a situation where big companies are going in and purchasing homes. It means bringing more energy online. It means increasing manufacturing, and we can help do that with better tax policy. Biden has moved us in the wrong direction when it comes to tax policy. We need incentives for companies to grow their manufacturing capabilities here on the U.S. soil. There are plans to do that. So in the United States House of Representatives, Chairman Jason Smith and the Ways and Means Committee is pushing legislation that would do just that. Biden and Democratic allies on Capitol Hill, unfortunately, are stymieing that. So let's produce more here in this country. Let's make more houses, more energy, more stuff. And that's going to drive down inflation. And by the way, create more jobs and prosperity in the process.
There you go. Brandon Arnold from the National Taxpayers Union, thank you for being here. I mean, there's a lot for people to consider every given day, but there's a reason. There's an exodus away from Bidenomics into more sensible ideas. Sir, thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate it. All right, coming up after the break, President Trump promising to veto his trial appeal date. More on that on America's Voice Live. Ron DeSantis said Florida emergency officials were making final preparations ahead of Hurricane Idalia. The National Hurricane Center issued an advisory warning that Idalia strengthened into a hurricane early this morning. It's a Category 1 right now, but it could get a lot stronger as it's expected to intensify into an extremely dangerous major hurricane before making landfall sometime midday tomorrow, maybe just before the program here. Storm predicted to make landfall in the Big Bend region. Of course, these things are subject to change. Governor DeSantis also said that the storm will bring potentially deadly coastal flooding, high winds that will leave tens of thousands of people without power and more. As a matter of fact, Fort Myers Beach is already starting to see some flooding as the hurricane passes through in the Gulf, as seen in this social media video. Look at that. And what is all that stuff, I asked. Already dozens of school districts canceling classes. Tampa International Airport has closed. State government offices in Tallahassee not open. Staffers will be working from home as needed if they have power. Local officials in 22 counties ordered upward of 1.5 million people in low-lying and flood-prone areas or who live in mobile homes to evacuate. DeSantis said there was a chance that winds could steer Idalia further west, potentially impacting Tallahassee and the capital. You just never know with these things. But it could be a Category 3 by the time it makes landfall, a wicked storm. The Florida region in the path of Idalia has not been hit by a hurricane since the late 1800s. But it's been hit before. None of this is unprecedented. Ron DeSantis said residents living in those areas should not underestimate the danger of the storm at all. In a Truth Social post yesterday, Donald Trump is vowing to appeal the trial date set for special counsel Jack Smith's case against him. Trump wrote that the trial date set for the day before Super Tuesday on March 4th, 2024, gives the corrupt government and deranged Jack Smith and his team of thugs, as Trump put it, exactly what they want. He once again blasted the special counsel team for bringing this case in the middle of campaign season. Yesterday, U.S. Judge Tanya Chutkan rejected trial date proposals from both Trump and Smith. Trump's team requested a trial date in April of 2026. Smith's team wanted to start before the end of the year. She said no to both. Here's where we are. University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill shooter Talib Key is being charged with first-degree murder and possession of a weapon on education property for allegedly shooting his own academic advisor on campus. Shots on campus reported around 1 p.m., and the suspect was apprehended about 2 miles from campus around 2:40 yesterday afternoon. The suspect, a doctoral student from China, and according to UNC's website, studied at the Wuhan University, which collaborated with the Wuhan Institute of Virology, ironically. A former classmate of the suspect told news outlets that he was shocked to hear who the suspect actually was, sharing that, quote, he was always very quiet, and every single time he would talk to me, he seemed very nice. The deceased victim was the suspect's academic advisor, Professor Ziji Yan. The two had worked closely together on multiple research projects focused on nanoscience technology. Strange tweets from a Twitter account that shares the same profile picture and name as the suspect are emerging. One referencing a kind of girl that he refers to with a derogatory term who may have influenced others to look down on him. And another referencing another female who he says he doesn't know who he has to let go of, mentioning that the truth hurts. Other deleted tweets reference the fact that he wants to make friends. Neither the motive nor the weapon discovered so far. We'll stay on top of it for you. Coming up after the break, Joe Biden pressures foreign countries to prioritize LGBTQA plus agendas. It's not going to fly. Up next to discuss it with us, Dr. Jeff Myers. That guy. Don't go anywhere. just in case you have not noticed, the White House has made the LGBTQ plus agenda a priority, not just here, but in foreign policy as well. It's pressuring developing nations to drop their laws against homosexuality, and some believe it's a threat to national security here at home. Joe Biden has appointed an international envoy for gay issues and made Pride Month a fixture at U.S. embassies as well. The administration also stands accused of trying to blackmail Christian nations in sub-Saharan Africa, threatening to hold back assistance if they don't support LGBT. Those countries are being forced to change policies, whether it's pronouns or legal recognition of certain behaviors in exchange for our expenditures in foreign aid, imposing this leftist viewpoint on the world and forcing countries that do things that are opposed to their own values. It's simply a form of ideological colonialism. What else would you call it? Here to discuss this, Dr. Jeff Meyer, Summit Ministries. Jeff, always a pleasure to see you.
Hey,
what benefit is it to us to force nations? Look, some of these nations in sub-Saharan Africa have large Muslim populations. Some have large Christian populations. They have cultures and traditions that are not American cultures and traditions. And yet we're going to tell what? Namibia and Botswana and South Africa and Tanzania and everybody else how to behave and how to conduct themselves? Is that the plan?
American foreign policy has come full circle. The purpose of foreign policy ought to be to secure alliances for national security's sake, both for our security as well as for the security of our partners. But what happened in the early 1900s was a belief that we could be an imperial power. We could take our enlightened virtues and then impose them on other nations using our foreign policy power to do it. We went away from that for a period of time because of 2 world wars and then the Cold War. And now it does appear that we are back to it. So I've traveled to many of these nations. They are completely baffled. They're wondering why, of all of the issues the United States could be concerned about, such as human rights, religious freedom, oppression of minority groups, things like that, why this would be the agenda. And the reason it can damage national security, Steve, is because in some of these countries, if you do certain things like with the LGBTQ agenda, you destabilize the government in power, which is in many cases the most stable option that there is. And then all of a sudden we're in a far worse situation just because we want everybody else in the world to be as enlightened as we are.
So, do as we say or we're going to hold back the money. Do as you say culturally or we'll hold back the money. And here's the thing. In some way, these countries are going to say no. A lot of the countries are going to say, no, you don't get to come in here and tell us that we need to have this progressive, Western worldview of progressive ideas and liberalism and socialist ideas. No, right? They're just going to say, get out of here at some point, aren't they?
They could do that. A lot of these nations are on the hook. So if they can't say no, then they just become more resentful. And the whole tragedy of this is there's a much better way to do it. You can secure the rights of minority groups. You can encourage anti-bullying programs. You can do all sorts of things that these nations would view as positive without actually putting up flags and giving people some really strange sense of what our national sovereignty in the United States is actually about.
So why did we end up in this place? Why has this become the pivotal discussion? Because it's not just in foreign policy, Jeff, as you know. There are all these conversations about transgenderism in the U.S. military and the proper pronouns, gender-affirming surgeries that the American taxpayers get to pay for members of the U.S. military, all these things. It doesn't sound like we've got our mission in focus. Sounds like we've lost our way.
Well, to the progressive left, this is the last I to dot, the last T to cross. This is radical individualism, radical egalitarianism at its best. If we can secure these rights and we can get people to believe there is no difference between male or female, then we can get them to believe anything, and the triumph of the left is complete. That seems to be what's going on. Now, the trend has been going for, many, many administrations. This is not new. The idea that whatever we're concerned about at the moment is what we will force other nations to comply with. That trend has been going for a long time. But when you get an administration in that is not necessarily run by President Biden on this, but run by people who only care about LGBTQ concerns and not other aspects of national security, then, of course, it's the old saying, if you've got a hammer, everything is a nail.
Well, apparently, but I don't think that most Americans are going to buy into this. And again, I think there's going to be, as you put, resentment and rejection from these other countries. Yeah, you've got them on the hook because they need the money. And so you've made them dependent on the money, which is true. They do the same thing here at home. Right? They do the same thing. They make individual groups or individuals in general dependent on pick your program. I mean, when more than half of Americans today are getting a federal check of some form or another, it's a continuous push towards dependence. And you do that with the individuals here in the country, and you do it with the people that are living in these other countries. And ultimately, you make the money the only thing that they can focus on, because without it, they're screwed.
That is true. And we have been doing foreign policy that way for a long time. There are many nations, such as Egypt, that we pay off to the tune of billions of dollars every year. We pay them money to say that they will not attack Israel, as an example. So the United States does throw money around, and it's taxpayer funds, no question. But to try to put this in a different context, imagine if somebody came into the presidency who was a Christian and said, we aren't going to have any security agreements with any Muslim nations unless they all reject Islam and convert to Christianity. That would be viewed as an international catastrophe. But when it comes to something like LGBTQ, the administration just doesn't see the parallel. But that is a religion, no question about it. It is a set of beliefs about the cause, nature, and purpose of the universe, and the ultimate goal of the people promoting that agenda. I believe, and then, I'm saying this as a Christian, so obviously I'm biased, but I believe their goal is to tear down the idea that there are any such things as moral absolutes that ought to guide us in developing a civil approach, not only in foreign policy, but even in our own national relations.
Morality and right and wrong become relative, is what you say. It all becomes relative, Jeff. That's what you're telling me. I'll give you the last word.
Well, yes. Well, if morality is relative when it comes to our foreign policy, then what is it that we're actually enforcing? Because the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights says, because we signing nations agree, therefore these things are true. They can very quickly decide they don't agree anymore. The international nature of these relationships is very, very fragile. And to throw political correctness into the mix seems to me to be a big mistake. We do not want any minority populations to be harmed, whether they are sexual minorities, religious minorities, or whatever. That's not the issue here. The issue is, what should the actual foreign policy of the United States federal government be?
To protect this country. That's exactly right.
That's the constitutional
Summit
approach.
Ministries. That's what it says in the document. That's correct.
Yeah.
Jeff, as always, thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Really appreciate it. All right, after the break, climate activists quickly find out that tribal police, they're not all that interested when it comes to breaking their laws or blocking their roads. Yeah, they're not into that. Boy, if we got some fun video for you straight ahead, you're going to like it. Don't go anywhere. know, it is that time of year again. Call your family, call your friends, get ready to fire up the grill one more time for an all-out cookout before they make us put crickets on the grill. Labor Day is an opportunity to host an extra special get-together, as you know. We're not saying goodbye to summer, we're celebrating it. You need a few menu ideas for your weekend? Well, whatever you decide on, you're going to need to dress up that meat with a flavor that can only be found in your rubs and sauces. So, we sent David Zier on a special assignment, and he sat down with the owner of Red State Barbecue to learn more about what can make that barbecue one for the ages. Take it away, David.
Well, if the news of the day has got you down, there's always comfort food. And the way to get to your heart is through redstatebbq.com. Red State Barbecue, they've got incredible rubs and sauces here. And we have with us Dave Carroll from Red State Barbecue. How are you, sir?
I'm great, David. Thanks for having me. Love seeing all those bottles lined up in front of you there.
Yes. I might start drinking them without anything. They're so good, so delicious. I use them in everything. And, I try to eat healthy. I save the red meat for 1 or 2 days a week. And one of the things I've been doing is using your product in dishes that you wouldn't normally think. I made this great Asian cauliflower. People are eating a lot of cauliflower rice. They chop up the cauliflower, they cook it down. I make it with sesame oil and soy sauce and fresh ginger and coconut milk, and then I throw in the taproom fire sauce instead of the Asian chili sauce that I would normally use. This stuff is awesome. It's on fire, and it's just such a great product. And you know what? You can incorporate all these products into anything you have. And one of my favorites too is the Alabama show horse. I make a slaw with it. Really wonderful. So I just wanted to share that with you, Dave. So what else is going on?
Well, first, I'd like to say I think I love the creativity. So I'm all about that. In terms of us, anything else that's going on, we're getting ready for Labor Day. It's that time of year. We're down to the final barbecue holiday, but not to worry. Tailgating is not far behind. So we're looking forward to that. So that's pretty much where we're at right now.
Yeah, so I cook a brisket, but I won't even attempt to go head to head with you guys. I hear your place in Lexington, Kentucky is just awesome. Where can our viewers find your restaurant, and how can they order your product?
Well, the restaurant is located on the outskirts of Lexington. So we're literally 2 minutes off of I-75. If you're in the corridor between Cincinnati and Lexington, we're about 2 minutes from one of the state's largest attractions, and that's Kentucky Horse Park. So we're in horse country. So yeah, if you're in this area, please stop by and see us. Now, if you want to go get sauces, you can go to redstatebbq.com and just click on shop, and it'll take you directly to that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I use this stuff on pretty much anything. You could put it on a shoe, and that would taste great. So I want to thank you, Dave, so much for joining us. And as I get more creative with this process here, I'll make sure that I'm in touch, and maybe we can share some recipes one day.
That sounds wonderful, David. Thank you so much.
Great, David. Everybody, David Carroll, redstatebbq.com. Check it out today.
There you have it. Yeah, don't use it on crickets. And Dave, don't eat a shoe. Listen, I'll buy the guy some steak. He can't eat a shoe. I feel terrible for him. Anyhow, back to the news now. President Joe Biden is planning on asking Congress to approve a $1.9 billion plan to fund the development of a new coronavirus vaccine, because I know you're ready to line up and get it along with your mask. On Friday, he signed off on a proposal saying it will likely be recommended that everybody get it, no matter whether they've got it before or not. I'll be passing. Pfizer ready to roll out the Noravax and XBB 1.5 vaccines as COVID continues to mutate and some cases are rising slightly. Voluntary masking also on the rise. Pass. Biden arrived back at the White House yesterday after ending his trip to Lake Tahoe. You see the mask he's wearing. I'll be wearing the same one. Now, there's an organization that still backs Obamacare, gun control, and extreme transgender policies that endanger our children. They claim to be bipartisan, but last year, 95% of their donations went to Democrats. AARP doesn't represent the values of American seniors. Fortunately, there's a conservative alternative, AMAC. The Association of Mature American Citizens proudly champions Americans' right to free speech, religious liberty, and the Second Amendment. AMAC defends parents' rights to protect their children and is fighting to restore America's election integrity. With more than 2 million members nationwide, AMAC is pro-faith, pro-family, and pro-freedom. I'm proud to be an AMAC member, and I encourage you to join today. Let's send AARP a strong message that they don't represent conservative seniors. Join AMAC today and amac.us/voice. That's AMAC, AMAC.us/voice, VOICE. Don't worry, we'll tell you about it again, but you'll be ready for it next time it comes around, won't you? Of course you will. After the break, we'll have a story that reminds us of what makes America wonderful. Usually it's you, or maybe it's me today. Who knows? Plus your answers to our America's Voice question of the day. I'll be right back. You know, we talk on this program about what makes America wonderful. We do it every day. The reason being is I want you to leave here after all the serious things we talk about, which are plenty, and all the things that are going on that are outrageous and irritating and upsetting and all of that. We take a moment to focus on the good things in this country, and there's plenty. This story is one of them. A 5-year-old boy living in Seattle, Washington, Edison Jewell, raised over $17,000 at his lemonade stand. Prices are higher than they used to be, apparently. Anyhow, $17,000 from his lemonade stand, and donated every single cent to the victims of the Maui wildfires. Young Edison was devastated watching the fires on his television, and he could not fathom all the families who lost their homes and all the kids who lost their toys. Edison's mom, Amy, wanted to help him make a difference, so they went out and stocked up on pink and yellow lemonades, ice cream bars, candy, water, popsicles, and then set up the stand last Saturday. The advertisement reading, "Lemonade for Lahaina." Good move, young man. Lemonade for Lahaina. While the lemonade cost $1, many people would donate $5, $10, even $20 at a shot, leaving the rest of their change in donations. Amy and her husband were even able to get their corporate jobs to match Edison sales 3-1. Nice work. After the weekend was through, the family was able to donate $17,000 to families in need in Maui. Edison learned a valuable lesson that every small act of kindness makes a difference. What you put out to the world, it comes back. It's true. That what makes America wonderful is that our generosity begets generosity, and Americans are never shy to stand together in times of need and give to those that need it the most. We got room for two good stories today. You know what makes America wonderful? We have big hearts that won't let us forget those who have suffered a loss, like in this story. The son of a fallen Utah police officer was escorted to his first day of kindergarten by his mom and a group of the Salt Lake Police Department called fill-in dads who stood in for his father. Jackson Romero was pictured holding his mom's hand as they walked with a pack of uniformed South Salt Lake police officers and Police Chief Jack Carruth. They went to the school building. Jackson was just 4 months old when his dad, South Salt Lake Police Officer David Romero, was killed in November of 2018. When suspects fleeing a reported burglary struck the officer with a vehicle, Romero, who served several tours in the Marine Corps before joining the police department, left behind his wife and their 4-month-old son. But they weren't left behind. Not by those on the front lines, they weren't. Never leave a man behind. Good stuff. All right, here's your question today. What is the main cause of the rise of violence in our teens? What is it? Flora Whitney says the dysfunctional government acts as our parents and our poor role models. Nancy Lynn Nagy, liberal education and justice systems. Jim Marion, liberal policies, of course. Catherine Sater weighs in with this. Everyone should do 2 years in the military after graduation of high school. That would end the problem. You know, that's what they do in Israel. It does seem to help. Michelle Park, our crazy world today. The better they be ready for what's coming, because they sure don't want to hear it. We'll leave it there for today. Another good program. Certainly appreciate you being here. We try to do our level best for you. But we're always willing to hear more. How do we improve? Go to SteveGruber.com, drop me a note and say, hey, Steve, here's what we want. Here's what we like about you. Here's what we don't like, Steve. Is my hair perfect? I'm joking, of course. Of course it's perfect. So send me a note. SteveGruber.com, do that. And don't forget to join me tomorrow for the Steve Gruber Show to kick off live programming here on Real America's Voice, just like every Monday through Friday. And I'll see you back here for AVL.
Here are some of the headlines we are featuring today from your favorite news outlets at offthepress.com. Hurricane season is kicking off with a bang as Idalia roars into the Florida Gulf Coast with winds over 100 miles per hour. It is expected to become a Category 3 or 4 when it hits tomorrow and continues through the Carolinas. You know it's a big one when airports in Florida are already closing. In the latest Biden crime family story, the National Archives has found over 5,400 emails showing that Joe Biden, as vice president, used 3 fake names to communicate with his son about their side gigs. Pope Francis believes that American Catholics are too focused on themselves and their factions. He even called them backward thinking in his latest verbal assault. And a tribe of Native Americans is demanding that the Washington Commanders football team return to their old Redskins name. Their petition already has 128,000 signatures. For stories like these and more updates all day long from your favorite news outlets, go to offthepress.com.
I'm Dr. Gina. This is the fastest hour in television. Miranda Conda and I here together again on this curvy couch right here, ready to zip through the stories of the day. So get ready to take notes and reach out on social media because, of course, we love to hear from you.
I love how we had to describe the couch as curvy couch.
Well, as if people don't know that it's a curve.
Yeah, but we just wanted to help you out. In case you were confused, we cleared that up. All right, let's get right to it. Of course, the first big story of the day, Joe Biden, well, he has a lot of fake names, apparently, and aliases. This could explain why he's so confused, Gina. Apparently, he's used these names when he was communicating with his son about internal shakedown bribery schemes, and the National Archives has all the emails and his possessions, but they just can't quite find the time to hand them over. And Congress, well, obviously it wants them. Watchdog groups want them. The American public, you deserve to know. But the bureaucrats who complain that Trump didn't turn over all the personal items after his time in the White House is now covering for Joe Biden.
The National Archives even admitted they have the emails. They said there are about 5,400 of them, in fact. These include Biden's fake names like Robin Ware, Robert L. Peters, and JRB. Also, of course, the big guy, another name they called him. But the National Archives completely stonewalling the whole thing.
Wonder why that is. Think there's a shakedown going on there? Maybe? Well, they can stonewall all they want. We already have plenty of evidence to impeach the guy. I mean, let's be real. And today on American Sunrise, and again, be sure and tune in, 8 o'clock through 10 o'clock, Monday through Friday. But we asked Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene when the impeachment is going to start.
It's a question.